Hello and welcome back to the Panti Personals. And there's a sense of deja vu about this winter, as it seems the other P word, pandemic, is not over until it's over. But as we try to figure out how to remain human and have a social life, I get to have some quiet, up close and personal time here in my panty parlour with my amazing guests. And today is no exception. With me is a man who walked away from a legal career to be a Dublin rapper and a professional dog walker. It's hip-hop artist Nealo, whose lyrics, riffs and rhythms often chart stories of loss and grief and put their finger on the unspoken emotions not just of life and love, but also what it means to be a man today. He's a Clonsilla lad and the passport says Neal Keating. And while hip-hop is his joy, his music career was once firmly anchored in punk. But now he describes himself as a guest in hip-hop culture, often collaborating and mixing it up with black Irish artists and musicians, creating a sound which is uniquely Irish and often particularly Dublin. Nealo, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And let me first off say that you are not, it turns out, the first professional dog worker we've had on the podcast.
Why? Are you serious?
Because we had Galia Arad. Do you know Galia?
No.
She's like an American import living here, singer-songwriter.
Right.
Very fun girl. And she also was a professional dog walker.
That's amazing.
Yes, indeed. And of course, I'm a vet's,
Yeah,
child,
yeah.
and I have a dog and a cat that I got in lockdown.
What kind of dog do you have?
Jack Russell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
like a proper mutt. Really loving my life and all. Longest relationship I've ever had. She's 14
Often
years
the
old,
case.
so she's
She's
getting
14?
on. So she's not as much fun in that sense because she just sleeps a lot and she hardly, her legs aren't good and all that. But the cat that I got early in first lockdown is so much fun.
Really?
Yeah. So
Is it just a regular cat or any kind of crazy?
Oh no, just a regular. Oh, I am firmly of the belief of get your mongrel and your mutt.
Yeah,
and
you're dead right.
Your
yeah.
regular cat.
Definitely, yeah.
So I love them. They're great and they've been great fun in lockdown.
They're great
and
company,
everything.
like.
And
They
where
really
does your dog thing start out?
I think from childhood, like my parents had a dog always, and I've always just loved animals for some reason. Everybody loves animals, but
Well, not everybody, which is the
that's
weird
true.
thing. Some people don't. Yeah.
It is weird when you meet people that don't like dogs. I don't understand. I never understand that. I was like, what's not to like? They're so simple.
And some people have this, fear of them, really primal fear. Like there's a woman in our building and, Penny is a 14-year-old Jack Russell who has never so much as stood on a fly. Do you know what I mean? And she won't get in the lift with us.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that comes from childhood, probably getting attacked
something.
very young or something, yeah.
Well, actually, I have to bring it up now that you've mentioned the word. Because you had a terrible incident with a dog. How long ago was that?
I think it would be 3 years ago in February, I think. Yeah.
And it was a big dog, was it?
Yeah, so basically I was walking this giant Newfoundland that belonged to a friend of mine, and it ended up swallowing a tennis ball. And I was trying to get the ball out because I felt like it was my responsibility, you know what I mean? Like it was happening on my watch or whatever. So I just kind of didn't even think about it. And before I knew it, my hand was in his mouth trying to get it out. And it was like a battle between us for 15 minutes maybe. And I ended up getting 57 stitches and 2 fractures in my hand. And the dog ended up dying. And it was just really rough experience. You know, those things in life where one moment you're out walking, doing your job, having a good time. And then the next minute you're in hospital for 2 weeks getting mad operations on my hand and stuff, and it's still sore 3 years later. It's still kind of hard to make a fist sometimes and stuff.
God, and all because he swallowed it.
He had 3 of them in his mouth at the time. He was such a messer of a dog.
God.
Yeah.
Well, now I just brought that up because it seemed to come up.
Yeah, we started heavy.
But actually, there is a segue into your music here because it was part of the impetus, was it, to get back into music?
Yeah, definitely. I think, in life sometimes when you go so low, at that time I was on the way to being a apprentice solicitor. I think I was doing my master's or just finishing my degree at the time. And then I was like, right, if life can get this bad, and I felt really bad after it. I took it really personally and I just felt really sad. And I just thought that, why not try and mold it into something that I want You know, like, because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been on the edge, like down that low. Like, I'm presuming you have. Like,
yeah, who hasn't?
Yeah, exactly. It almost feels like life's not worth living anymore. And then I got that low that I was like, oh, actually, if I'm going to stick around and just like continue with this life or whatever, I'm going to try mold it into something that I want to do. I'm not going to live it for somebody else, which is what I was doing with the law stuff, you know. I was trying to appease the voices of what I thought everybody wanted me to do. My parents, society, you know, all that stuff. So then I was like, fuck, I'm just going to do music, you know? Like, that's what I want to do. I had already started making a few songs, but I hadn't released anything. And that kicked me into gear, you know? It really did. I actually got better. As soon as I came out of the hospital, I was just better at doing it for some reason. It was just like a switch, you know?
You referenced there the law. And
actually,
if you sort of read things about your looks and stuff about you, everybody goes to that, oh, he abandoned a career in the law to get into hip-hop.
Because people love a story.
They
that's
do,
what,
But that's not exactly how, because you had been in music before law. So maybe let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. So you're from Clonsilla. Of course, it immediately jumped out to me that your mom was a milliner, a hat maker.
Yeah, she still is, To
me, that's very glamorous.
She's amazing, she's deadly. You should see her study. Just the colours in there, it's crazy. Like,
and she makes them like
just from scratch, like literally,
And they're like one-offs. People say, I'm going to a wedding or something.
Like a woman will come over saying, like, I'm going to a wedding, here's my dress, or like, you know, tell her a little bit of the story maybe, and then she'll chat to them for an hour or two and then make the hat. And it's a really beautiful thing, you know, when you think about it.
That's very difficult to wear with the wigs, I have to tell you.
So I'd imagine, I feel like you have to get like a really big one, maybe.
Or a little fascinator.
A little tiny one you just pin in. Yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe she can make one for you sometime.
Well, I will definitely keep that as an option.
I'll pay for it.
But so your mum was making hats and your dad was a guard, right?
He was a guard,
And your first musical love... on the surface seems like a million miles away from where you are now.
Yeah.
But your first musical love was punk.
Yeah. I started playing in bands, like, you know, growing up in an estate, and there was really like nothing to do except for like hang out on the corner and with the lads like that are getting up to no good or get into music. So then me and my friend Mark, who was like my oldest friend, he was playing guitar and I started playing bass. Well, you know, you put a band together, played a few gigs, and then all of a sudden I was like, I love this, you know, and just kept playing in different bands for years. And then
what was the part about it that you loved?
I think I loved everything about it. Like, I loved the music. I was betting to the music. I was betting to being on stage, going to gigs. I still am. Like, if you ask me to pick like a night on the couch or a night at a gig, I'm going to go to the gig every single time, you know. And I think that's what one of the reasons the last 2 years was pretty hard. But yeah, so I just started playing in bands and coming into town, and that was a real eye-opening experience, meeting other people that were into the same kind of music and growing with those people. And eventually got to the stage where I was into like a genre called hardcore punk, which kind of originated in like New York or LA or whatever. And so I started playing a band called Frustration, and then we ended up going on tour of Europe and America and doing that for like 5 years, and then we broke up. And then I started hip hop a few years later.
Yeah, I mean, so you were like deeply embedded in the punk scene.
That was everything. My whole life
was pretty successful.
Yeah, like within a small scene. Yeah.
And on the surface, it does seem like it is almost the opposite end of the spectrum in a sort of a way. From hip-hop.
Definitely.
But it's not really in other ways. What is it about both of them that attracted you?
I think both of them seem to be... Well, hardcore definitely was, and hip-hop has sides that are like on the forefront of like social issues a lot of the time. Like hardcore punk, you know, like in Dublin even would have been like loads of people would be vegan, straight edge, like kind of just like really like not anarchist kind of viewpoints, but like just really socially aware of like what's happening, and like you know, like squatting in houses and like, you know, like doing stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that side of things, like the social justice side of things. And I think it's the same now in hip hop. It's like anytime there's an issue that needs to be talked about, most of the first voices in Dublin, a lot of them will be from the hip hop scene, you know what I mean? So whether it's like, you know, someone like Mango or Denise Child or something like that talking about it, you know. And I think that's amazing. to be able to have a voice like that and to be able to talk about issues, is really good. And then the community aspect of both of them is amazing.
Yeah.
The DIY ethos of both of them is amazing. Just, fuck record labels, let's just do it ourselves. I love that idea,
And they're both outside of the mainstream.
Yes, I think that was the thing that attracted me the most. Maybe like a distrust of authority, which I still have a lot of. And that's probably what attracted me mostly to. It's gas that you clocked that and I didn't.
but they are, they're on the fringes in a way,
which I loved.
Yeah,
that's what I love, and I love the danger of both genres as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
defo.
So when you were back in your punk days and you were devoting your life to noise,
basically.
Like, how did the Garda dad and the milliner mum feel about all of that?
I think they just were confused, maybe, It's only now that they've both really, like, my mum would have been really supportive, but it's only now that they both would come to my gigs and stuff like that.
Oh, they come to your gigs now?
Yeah, they would, yeah. Like, we played the Button Factory 2 weeks ago and they both came to that, and it was really nice to have them there,
Yeah.
It's nice to get to feel that support, I suppose. But back then, I'd say they were just confused. They're like, this chap's just screaming on stage and all these people are baiting each other.
I mean, I know you have to say it's lovely to have your parents there, and it is. But at the same time, in my experience, it makes me more self-conscious.
100%.
Because of, there's sometimes the kind of stuff you might not really be saying
and talking about.
There. Yeah. And so do you really love it when they come?
I do, but I wouldn't want them to come to every gig because sometimes I want to be free to not think about that, like you're saying, Well,
and also it's a kind of responsibility I've always had because my parents sometimes come to shows and that, and but it doesn't matter how you cut it. This isn't their thing.
No, not at all.
There's a part of me that's constantly the whole night worried, like, are they having a good time?
Yes,
and I feel this responsibility for them to have had a nice time.
And in order to perform fully to your potential, you need to not be thinking about that.
Exactly.
You need to be free and in the moment,
So I love it, that my parents sometimes will go to things and everything. And I love that they're supportive and all of that. But at the same time, I feel like I can't 100% give myself to the performance when I'm aware that mommy and daddy are sitting
And where
there.
do they stand? Do they
I would never let them be in the front so I could see them. No, God, no.
in the back?
No, yeah.
They probably don't want to be in the front
No,
anyway.
they don't. No, they don't. It's funny though, and once I did a show in my hometown.
It's in the documentary, isn't it?
Is,
I've seen it.
And terrifying, but also really lovely because I also kind of designed the show specifically.
Right.
That my parents.
It was in a tent, wasn't it? I remember.
They put up a marquee in the town.
Amazing.
And that was kind of the perfect solution.
Yes,
like design an actual show for my parents and their neighbors.
Did you curtail everything so that was specifically like
I didn't
friendly enough to
risky enough that it felt true to me, but at the same time there was stuff that I was like absolutely not doing that.
Not today.
Not today.
Yeah. That's gas. So, and did anybody in that whole show say anything negative to you, like afterwards, or
no, not at all. I mean, you're from Clonsilla, but I'm from the proper classic, country town.
Yeah.
Like it didn't have a town hall to do the show in, so that's what I had to put the marquee up in the local tire business. But it's one of those things I always kind of joke about. When you're from a small town, if you get to some level in your thing where the town gets mentioned in the newspaper or on the radio or on the telly in relation to you, they are thrilled about that.
That's a huge one.
And to be honest, they couldn't care less what you're doing in order to bring it. Like, I think they would almost be just as happy if you were a serial killer, as long as the town was getting mentioned.
That's amazing.
So no, they were all.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was fun.
And have you gone back? Would you ever think about going back since and doing another one?
I think once was enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I wouldn't
They would probably agree
I was
with me.
thinking there, I wouldn't play a gig in Clonsilla.
Why not?
I don't know. Like I have got offered gigs in the Clonsilla Inn before, and I'm like, no, I want to go back when I'm a much bigger artist. You know what I mean? If I'm going back, I'm going back big.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Like, I didn't go back and do it at the Christmas show in the whatever, and there was like a documentary crew turning up as well, so it felt real.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, and it was on the cusp of a few things for you as well. Yeah. Crazy.
Let's go back to this. So you're in the punk scene. You're doing relatively well. Mommy and Dad, are a little confused, but on board,
Yeah.
all of that. And then you basically said, okay, I'm going to toss all that and I'm going to, I'm going to make Mammy and Daddy extra happy and get a real job. You studied law.
Yeah. So before that, I had actually moved to Vancouver for a year. And then when I came back from that, I was playing in the band, like, for a good few years, like probably smoking a lot of weed, going out a lot, sessioning, and enjoying life as you do in your 20s,
Yeah.
And then I kind of got to a stage where I was like, oh, what am I actually doing? The fear of like everybody else's voices in your head being like, you're not good enough or you're not going anywhere. And I kind of was like, right, what's the opposite of this? Maybe I'll just study law. And then I started going to Maynooth to do a degree as a mature student. I think it was like 26, 27 maybe. And then I actually found that I enjoyed it. I started to like it, not love it. I just liked it. And I liked the feeling of purpose that it gave me as well. And the challenge, of taking something big on board that's not necessarily your passion, but putting a lot into it. Yeah, and I just kept doing that, kept following that road. And I think it's one of the reasons that I'm doing good in music now is because of that. Because if you apply yourself to something that you're not that into, when you find something that you are into, then it doesn't feel like work, but you already know the road, that kind of way?
Yeah.
Like a degree helps you with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because music is an industry. It's a hard industry. It's probably the toughest industry, I think, Like if I was to put the same effort that I put music into law, I'd be fucking rich for it right now, But with music, you could put so much effort in, but you might not go the wrong road or you might not know the right people or, so.
Yeah.
But I do feel like law helped me with that. And I don't regret it. And it's a nice feeling to have like a master's in your back pocket if you ever need it.
But were Mammy and Daddy thrilled at that point?
I'd say they were proud, yeah, definitely, yeah. I'd say like that. My dad especially, like he'd be like very like into that idea of like, his son being a solicitor and stuff like that. And like he's proud of me now, which is nice,
My parents were always very supportive and all that. But it isn't their thing.
Yes.
And they never really understood what the hell I was doing running around nightclubs, dressed as a cartoon or whatever. As long as I was paying my rent and seemed happy, they were good.
Yeah.
But they didn't get it.
Yes, yeah.
Which is fair enough. But then I remember when I opened the pub,
right.
My dad knows what a pub is.
Yes.
He knows what that is. And he knows what a small business is, all that.
Yeah.
So he then became very interested and he'd always have loads of questions about the pub and wanted to know things because he understood what I was doing in that part of my life.
Right.
Was there an element of that, do you think, with your parents?
Yeah, I think so. I think they struggle to understand music in general, like, and how, especially in Ireland, it's such a hard place to make a career out of. You know what I mean? And still struggling with that. But like, when they started seeing me like popping up on the TV or in the Irish Times or something like that, that's when they really started to turn a corner and be like, oh yeah, he is doing something. Sort of like, the village where you grew up. It's like, oh, the name's in the paper.
Yes, it must be real.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when I was nominated for the Choice Prize last year, and that was a big one for them, like bringing the little trophy thing that they give you over to the house and like leaving it there, and like it just feels nice, because we walk our own paths, but like we do like the blessing of our parents, it does make you feel nice to have it. Yeah, and I didn't always have it, so it's nice to have it now,
Well, you always want to feel that your parents not necessarily approve, but are understand what you're doing or whatever, and
like they're in your corner. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And also, you don't want to disappoint them.
That's 100% true. Yeah, exactly. But some people have too much of that in themselves, where they they pigeonhole themselves into what they think they should be doing.
Yeah, and that's how people become dentists.
Yeah, shit like that. I mean, some people might want to be dentists.
Nobody does. Nobody does. Who says I want to look inside people's mouths all
the honesty,
day?
I was trying to
nobody.
You're dead right, actually. Yeah.
I'm deeply suspicious of
dentists. What do you think? Maybe same for accountants. Do people like wake up in the morning and be like,
but I can see that some people like say, oh, they like business, and they like, and accountants can go into a billion other things.
That's true.
But a dentist can only look inside people's mouths and go, oh, and my God, that's awful.
Serious pain, like
kind of. I mean, I guess there's a satisfaction when you fix somebody's mouth.
That's true.
But 99% of it is scraping.
It's pretty thankless when you think about it, isn't it?
It is, and that's the other thing. Yeah. Everybody hates going to see you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that cannot feel good.
No, definitely
when
not.
Everybody hates going to see you.
It's not like a tattoo artist or something, because they deliver pain, but then at the end of it, people are really happy. They're like, oh, I love my tattoo, blah blah. Yeah. mad.
Okay, probably this is a good time to hear some music.
Yeah, of course.
So you're going to do a couple of songs for
Yeah.
us, and Rachel and Adam are going to join you. So tell us all about this.
So we're going to do 2 songs. One's called Under the Weather and the other one's called You Can't Go Home Again, and they're from the album that I brought out last year, which was at the start of, maybe during the pandemic, around October.
I mean, yeah, all that sense of time is just...
Yeah, it's gone out the window.
Okay, yeah.
And the album's called All the Leaves Are Falling, and we're going to do 2 songs now with Rachel and Adam, who are 2 of my best mates. So it's lovely. It's lovely.
Rachel's on vocals.
Yeah, Rachel's singing and Adam's on the beats.
Okay.
Yeah, let me get out of here.
Let's hear them.
All right, let's go. Maybe we're just looking for something under the weather, cause a part of me goes hungry, my demons are on the welfare. All my friends are lonely, we're still dying with no healthcare. Hey, yeah. I was in the kitchen when you told me, I was in Vancouver when you phoned me. I write songs like old obituaries, but that might be the old me. I think that's the old me. And maybe this is a symbol of the way things are. I'm scraping pennies just to pay the road tax on my car, and the housing markets are gone through the roof. My 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town is proof that the way things are going is fucked up. The rich are getting richer and it doesn't look good. You wanna take a look at the suicide rates in my hood? The answer you can't find in the bottle bookies or Bible. I was on the late night dial-up, asking Jeeves for answers to the keys to survival. Might just have to call me when you find them, buried in the couch or in my mind, love. I was on a seek and you shall find buzz. I was in the kitchen when you told me, I was in Vancouver when you phoned me. I write songs like old obituaries, but that might be the old me. I think that's the old me. Alright, this song's called You Can't Go Home Again. I don't wanna fight with you. I'd take a plane right through the sky if it meant I'd spend the night with you, if that'd be alright with you. Hey, and when I look into your eyes, I see universe is lighting up, and that's enough to lighten my load. I follow all the darkest roads that steer home. Maybe that's the only home I've ever known. And I don't wanna fight with you. I'd take a plane right through the sky if it meant I'd spend the night with you, if that'd be alright with you. Hey, and when I look into your eyes, I see universe is lighting up, and that's enough to lighten my load. I follow all the darkest roads that steer home. Maybe that's the only home I've ever known. I was back in Berkeley in the Bay when Mac Dre died. I know some days I'm hurting, but some days I see blue skies. But I paint my soul and my heart in this art. I'm starting to act like these things don't matter. I'm burning through dreams like shatter. Root of pain is attachment. I'm latched to your catchment area like phony politicians that build up promises without caring. Scary how much we're sharing, like LimeWire torrent parent. I gave this city my all, and my all is all but lost its bearings. And I don't wanna fight with you. I'd take a plane right through the sky if it meant I'd spend the night with you. That'd be alright with you. Hey, and when I look into your eyes, I see universe is lighting up, and that's enough to lighten my load. I follow all the darkest roads that steer home. Maybe that's the only home I've ever known. Let's go, Rach.
Yours is the only love I've ever known. Now I understand I should have showed you. And time passes and I'm getting old, and I can feel this weight upon my shoulders, and it's you on my mind now that it's colder. I know you'll be just fine now that I told you.
Come back home now. Come back home now. Come back to me. Come back home now. Come back home now. Come back to me. Come back home now. Come back home now. Come back to me. Come back home now. Come back home now. And I don't wanna fight with you. I'd take a plane right through the sky if it meant I'd spend the night with you, if that'd be alright with you. Hey, and when I look into your eyes, I see universe is lighting up. That's enough to lighten my load. I follow all the darkest roads that steer home. But maybe that's the only home I've ever known. And And I don't wanna fight with you. I'd take a plane right through the sky if it meant I'd spend the night with you. That'd be alright with you. Hey. And when I look into your eyes, I see universe is lighting up, and that's enough to lighten my load. I follow all the darkest roads that steer home. Maybe that's the only home I've ever known.
Yay. Gorgeous.
Oh, that was fun.
How long have you guys been doing stuff together?
Not that long, since last year only. Yeah, me and Adam have been working together for a few years, and then Rachel came on board like last year. Yeah, we usually have like a band of maybe like 8 or 9 people.
Yeah,
if we play a full gig, like,
yeah.
like you know, with saxophone and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I've watched all your videos.
Yeah,
because I do all the research. Yeah, because I was actually a little surprised when I started watching the videos. To see that the live show it's a full on.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a little party, you know?
Yeah.
This one's for my brothers in Blanchardstown and my sisters who wear the crowns. If you're lost, I pray that you're found. We laid too many in the ground in the early 10s, staring at life with a grayer lens, looking at Alexa, asking questions like God knows when. Can we move out to the suburbs? I can't pay the rent. And the money's been wearing 2 faces like it's Harvey Dent. It's got me staring down in an empty palm like it's hardly spent. I'm about to skip on food in April and it's hardly Lent, but I could have for length about how politics is crooked as a dog's hind legs, and the economy's built on equal people camped in tents. I can see them now, the tents kept low behind all fences, and all friendships are long gone cold without the lamp sip. It's all love, my life is long gone cold. It's all love, my life is long gone cold.
And everybody that's in the band is my friend, most importantly. So that's like, it's just always great crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, most of my gigs are alone. And then you finish, and if it all goes well, and people are like, yeah, and then you walk off, and you're in the dressing room on your own.
It's
just
thing.
a weird thing.
Yeah.
And so occasionally, I toured with this show called Riot, which was like a cast of 20, and it's just so much more fun to, you're back in the dressing room with 15 nuts.
Yeah, and there's the after show buzz then as well, and you have a little party and stuff,
Yeah, so much prefer that.
It's much more fun, definitely.
And all the pressure isn't totally on you either.
Yes, exactly.
Other people can fuck up.
But I suppose there's the other side of it then. If you're a solo, you can make more money, but then you have to travel on your own. It's hard.
One of the things I want to talk to you, because you've described yourself as being a guest in another culture in a way. Talk to me about that. And can an Irish fella, from Clonsilla and all that, be a hip-hop artist?
Yeah. I've said that in interviews and conversations, like feeling like a guest in a culture, but I don't think that defines, what, like, say, a white rapper is or anything like that. I think that's just more how to act in the culture. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Don't be like going in, dropping all the slang, trying to be American if you're like just a white dude from Dublin. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to, in order to pay respect to the culture, you have to come with the authenticity, And that's where I feel like that guest thing comes in, you know what I mean? And also to not just surround yourself with people that look like you. Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful things about, I feel like now I've gotten a second chance in music, because I started with the punk bands, and that was for the most part just rooms full of dudes. Yeah. That's all it was, baiting each other, And it was great crack. But I look back on pictures of that now, I'm like, it's almost fucking embarrassing. It's just like a sausage fest every gig, And now the world has changed so much now that like hip hop has so many women and people from all different ethnicities, and I'm getting a chance now to like have friends that I didn't have growing up that have come from different places and have different experiences in life, and I think that's a huge part of it for me as well. It's lovely, like it really is nice.
Well, because actually it's been one of the really interesting things about doing these podcasts over the last X number of years. We've had people like JLOL and Tolu and
all amazing, like
Fairly Speaks and whoever, Jafaris. To see, a sort of a kind of a new excitement in Irish culture, blending elements from all over. It feels like something very fresh and exciting in a way that I haven't really felt about Irish things in a long time.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And it's very exciting to see what it's beginning to create and to imagine what might eventually come out and what it might eventually look like. I mean, is that part of the excitement for you?
Yeah, definitely. And it's amazing right now. And it's going to get crazier because every few months, like, a new artist will come out and you're like, oh, these are pushing it forward even more. And it's so new. And I think we're unique in that way that it's so new, because England, you know, they've had like grime and stuff for a long time. And like, I suppose we're just reaping the benefits of the like immigration here in the 90s and 2000s, you know. We actually have like Irish African people now like contributing to Irish culture, making it like just making amazing music, and it's so nice to see, and it's an honor to be a part of it, to be honest. Like, it really is an honor. And all the artists that you mentioned there, like, I either have songs with them, or I've played gigs with them, or I'm friends with them, and that's such a nice like thing to be a part of. And everybody's so helpful, you know. There's no really attitudes or anything like that. Everybody wants to see the scene grow, and it will. You know, like in 10 years we're gonna be like, it's gonna be crazy over here. It really is. Like,
well, even just my first proper gig back after, you know, all the lockdowns and restrictions was the Mother Block Party thing.
And
you know,
Denise
which
played
headlining that, and she absolutely blew the non-existent roof off the outdoor gig.
I can imagine.
But I was just sort of thinking, you know, it's such a different, you know, Ireland than just 20 years ago. And also because what I love about people like Denise, she's also so authentically Limerick. And there's no, I think in the past, Irish people used to feel that in order to sort of have some sort of success outside of Ireland, they had to almost blandify their references. They were afraid to talk about Spar or whatever.
When in reality, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, you know? It is. The more specific is international. Yeah,
exactly. The more specific you are. And it's the same in all writing. I think it's like, if you talk about things that are very specific to you, people actually relate to that.
They do,
like you were saying, we had, especially in music, had this idea for years. Like, it was such middle of the road music coming out of Ireland, and even U2 are like that. And I like U2, but like U2, like, you know, Codaline, bands like that, they're all great bands, but it's very, very palatable, non-specific, extremely non-specific, you know. So then to have like Denise on the other side of that, like just dropping so many Limerick references, it's fucking refreshing, you know what I mean?
It is,
and I love art like that really just speaks to the person themselves, and it's so relatable, you know. Accent as well is a huge thing.
It
for
is,
that as well, you know. It is,
and that's another thing, because you know, I think for a long time, or certainly in rock music and that, there's a tendency to sing in this non-specific accent. And that really doesn't work in rap and hip-hop, and that does it. And so, I mean, Dublin is very much part of your DNA, and it's in the music too.
Yeah. And the thing is, I know rappers that will go way to Dublin when they're not from, like, there's people there's people that fetishize working class as well, you know what I mean, and try to jump on that. Like, I grew up in Blanche in Clonsilla. Like, there's lads 2 doors down from me that talk like, oh boy, what's the story, do you know what I mean? But my accent was never really like that, so I had to like really refine, like, okay, what's authentic to me, and it's not too Dublin, and it's not American. It's, I don't know, it's just the way I talk, you know what I mean, and try to work on that and get it out, you know. And but accent is different for each person as well. It's whatever you want it to be, really, at the same time.
Exactly, who you're talking to.
Yeah,
exactly. From Mayo.
Yeah,
but, you know, like,
exactly, it is, And I think I was really quick early days to be like, oh no, everybody should be rapping in an Irish accent if they're born here, blah blah, but not really, because different people have different experiences. Like someone like JLOL or Denise has a different life experience to me, and they can rap in whatever the fuck accent they want, you know. If they're dropping Limerick references, that's amazing. I love that, you know.
But Dublin does sort of play an outsized.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know,
Well, it's where I'm from. It has to. And I think all good art is definitely dipped in place. You know what I mean? For me, anyway, the stuff that I really like is when song names have like places in them.
And you're sort of passionate about Dublin.
Yeah,
I'd say that I am too. Like, I'm a blow in, but I absolutely fucking love Dublin.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard these days to love it. It's hard to love. It's like almost an abusive partner or something like that.
It is, and I didn't always love it.
Yeah,
I always liked it, I think, but I didn't always love it. started to appreciate things about it that I didn't appreciate when I was younger.
Like what?
Like its size, for example.
Yes, yeah.
Like when I was younger, I wanted to be the biggest,
Yeah.
I had small town boy syndrome or
Right.
whatever. And now I love Dublin's size.
You wanted it to be bigger?
Yeah, I wanted it to be
like New
bigger.
York or something.
Yeah, I mean, I literally went to live in the biggest city in the world on purpose, when I was 20 or whatever.
And how long did you live in New York for?
No, I lived in Tokyo.
Oh, did you? Okay,
Yeah,
right. Did
yeah,
you live
yeah.
in New York now?
No.
All right. Did you spend
No,
time there?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
I mean, I'm gay. But you know what I mean? And now those things about Dublin, like I love the fact how easy Dublin is. And
Yes,
you can wander
yeah.
into town and bump into somebody, and
Yes,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to spend 4 days deciding which coffee shop to go to.
That's the
whatever, all that stuff.
Which is like London is that
Yeah,
kind of
all
vibe. Like
that.
you have to organise hangouts in advance.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, exactly.
But you're right that sometimes it makes it difficult to deliver, and especially at the moment there's
Right now,
kind of a feeling like the people who have been given the responsibility to look after it aren't looking after
They're
it
not doing
very
it at
well.
all. Like, yeah. It's so hard to live in, like just in terms of like the cost of living. Like it's crazy, you know.
Yeah, it's insane, right?
Like you're talking like it's the same cost, like rent wise, as Vancouver, which is a city that has so much more going for it in terms of like I'm talking infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, we have a beautiful country and a beautiful city, beautiful people and culture and all, but like the infrastructure isn't here to be able to justify charging you £1,000 for a room. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yeah, it's
not
insane.
fair. Like, you know.
But it's funny you said Dublin's beautiful, and I say part of the reason why I like it so much is it's not beautiful.
Some of it is, yeah.
And it's
Some of
never
it's not.
going to be
No, yeah.
Paris.
Yeah,
you know what
no,
I mean?
no,
It just can't be. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah.
Who wants to live in Paris always?
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
I love Dublin because it's accessible and feels like it feels very real.
Yes, it's a very real city.
But maybe it's becoming harder for real people to live here.
I think so. Yeah, I think especially like people are just getting forced out. You know, whether that's to different countries, different cities, or just like to Meath or Kildare. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like. I got out of like a 10-year relationship recently, and we both had to go our separate ways, and I have a baby, and like just trying to find somewhere for both of us to live separately. It's been a nightmare, and we're still going through it, you know. And it's just as a single person hard to live. You know,
it is. Yeah,
it's not fair, really. You know,
it's funny. I was going to bring up the sort of pandemic-y stuff next, not because I want to talk about the pandemic, because I fucking hate talking about it. I'm sorry. But it has played this big outsized role, and in a way, I feel like it revealed something about Dublin to us. But I think it also gave everybody time or space or forced us to whatever to take stock of lots of things about our lives, including relationships and what you're doing with your life and work and music and all these kind of things. So it is interesting to me that, during the pandemic, yourself and your missus, decided very amicably, I gather, decided to sort of separate. And do you think the pandemic and all of that was part of...
Yeah, like it could not be.
Yeah.
It's been part of everything, you know? And I think when people are like... Yeah, you're just forced to look at yourself more so. Like, I think a lot of my breakup was just me looking at myself and being like, fuck, like, I'm annoying to live with. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a fucking man. I'm annoying. I have bad habits. I've picked up bad shit along the way. But yeah, well, I think we just felt like, it's going to be better if we're just friends. Better. I felt like better for my son.
And what age is your son
He's
now?
2 and a bit now.
Okay.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Fun age.
Yeah, it's a great age. It's actually the most fun so far. Yeah, the first year is tough. I found anyway, but the after 2 is getting fun. He's like waking up to the world and like saying stuff. Coming out with random stuff. Like,
well,
like
when people have babies and they give me the tiny baby, I'm like, it's so cute.
It's so cute. Yeah.
And now what?
I
like it when they're moving around and saying
when you can
stuff.
chat to them.
And
Get a bit of crack out of them. Like, yeah, exactly. Definitely, yeah.
But having a baby, obviously dramatic change there.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It also maybe makes it harder to say, fuck it, I'm going to follow my heart and do music and not do the law business.
Yeah, that's true.
Was there moments?
Yeah, there was definitely moments, and especially with like the pandemic and stuff, where it's like I had no jobs. I had 2 jobs before it, and then I had all of a sudden no jobs,
Yeah.
And And that was hard because like you do look at them and you're like, shit, am I going to be able to provide? And then it goes back to the housing thing that we're talking about. It's like, how the fuck do you get a mortgage? But I'm living in the moment, and if I can look after him, put clothes on his back, you know, have a roof over his head, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? Plenty of kids are raised like in all different kinds of environments. You know, I think if he's loved, that's the most important thing. You know, and his mum loves him to bits, and I love him to bits, and that's literally all I care about. You know, I wouldn't be the person that I am if I was going off and doing something else. I wouldn't be in any way close to happy. So that's most important, I think. You know,
and also, you know, although the careers in the arts and all that can be a little worrying at times. They do allow you to sort of manage your own time more and decide, you know, how much time you're spending with someone.
Yes.
And, you know, rather than coming home from your law firm, working 12 hours a day or whatever they expect.
And probably want to go straight to sleep then, you know.
Yes, and also wanting to just kill people.
Yeah, exactly. I found that I was coming home on a Friday and then going on the session till Sunday to get away from whatever the fuck it was doing during the week. Yeah. And then by Monday you're fuming at yourself, you know, because you've had no rest, like, you know. Now I feel more centered a lot, and I feel a sense of purpose. That's really nice, you know. Yeah.
Did you do? How long did you do the office business for?
I think I was in there for like 3 years maybe, but even before that I was working in an insurance company for a year, so I've had a good taste of that world, enough to know that I never want to go back. Like, no offense to anybody that does it or was there with me or anything, but like, just not for me, you know. Same as it's not for you.
No offense, because even artists need insurance. And
yes,
a lawyer occasionally.
And a dentist.
And a dentist. But horses for courses, and it's not, you know, my course.
No, me neither.
You know, when you have a child and all, you know, most parents certainly want me to believe that their whole outlook on life entirely changes. So did it?
Yeah, it definitely did, but I heard before he was born, like I kept hearing this thing of like this immediate switch that people have. I didn't get that, but like that was more gradual for me. Like over the year or like over the 2 years, started to sink into it and really love it. I think at the start I didn't. I loved him.
Well, it's a shock in the beginning.
It's a fucking shock. Yeah, your life is like not yours anymore. Like someone, I think it was Louise McSherry, like described it to me before as like you go into a lovely room. And the door locks behind you, and you can never go back to the old room. But the new room is lovely, but you can't go back there. You know what I mean? Like, and that's exactly what it's like, you know. And you just have to get used to that room. And eventually you do, and it's fucking better than the room you were in before. But it just takes a while to get there, you know. It does.
But also, I think people like to tie things up in a neat package. So I think there's probably a lot of back projection when people say, "Oh, it's like I became this other person."
Nah, that's not true. For most people, probably not true. I'd say. Especially not for men. I feel like men might have a bit of a different time, maybe because women have a more of a maternal instinct. Baby comes from them, you know. It's inside them for 9 months before it's out. Whereas men are just like fucking like, not that it's a shock for both sexes, but like men just like I think they need more time or something. Maybe they're a little bit more selfish as well. Like, you know?
There's also, I think there is a big cultural aspect to it.
Yeah.
Although motherhood may not even be appreciated as much as it should be, in the same sense, women are given a certain, you know, expectation and respect around it. Whereas men, there's still this kind of weirdness, like, almost embarrassed to be seen pushing the pram around Tesco.
That's very strange to me.
Yeah.
I remember going over to a relation's house and then being like, God, you're a very hands-on dad. And all I was doing was changing a nappy or something like that. And I was like, what? Like, how does that make me a hands-on dad? Like, that's just cleaning a shite out of my son's hair. It's like, you know, that's not like a hands-on. That's not being a good dad. That's just normal. Yeah. You know?
And have you found being a father and all that stuff coming into the songs?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe not as much as I thought it would, but like it's definitely come into a few songs for sure. Yeah, like my songs, they bounce all around wherever my fucking head was at the time I was writing it, you know. So he's definitely come into lines, and I have some verses about him and stuff in some new songs as well. Yeah.
Well, actually, speaking of songs, so you are going to do another song.
Yeah.
Rosemary, and it is a new song.
Yeah, it's a song that I wrote about my mom. She's been so like supportive of me and like helpful and like made so many sacrifices so I can be here to do this, even, you know, and still is so proud of me. And like it just felt nice to write about her. And every time I sing it, if she's there, like she was there at the gig 2 weeks ago when I sang it, and like gave her flowers beforehand on stage. It was real nice, like, and she was up on the balcony in the Button Factory, which is fucking ages away, and someone was down the floor, and I was like, someone get them flowers to her. And by the time the song started, she had the flowers already, and I could just see how happy she was, and it was just like really nice, you know. I feel like mothers a lot of the time don't get like a lot of the thanks that they deserve. You know what I mean? The gratitude that they deserve. They like, you know, a lot of times it's just washed over how much effort that took.
Yes.
And I think having a child myself, that's, you're asking me where that bled into the music, probably through this, or looking at the amount of graft that she put in early days before I even fucking had a memory, you know, and now I understand that, you know, and that's probably where this song came from as well.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
One sister, yeah, she's older, yeah.
All right, so let's hear it.
All right, cool.
And Rosemary, I take it, is your mother's name.
Lately I've been feeling like a ghost. I was brought up by the coast. I'm a water baby, I don't need a boat. I just had a baby, spend me days just keeping him afloat. To him I'm like a life raft, to me I'm just a boat. To you your dad was just a boat. I know it's not his fault, he never sowed the seeds of hope. I know it's not my call, the seasons always seem to flow. But maybe I'll adore you when the seasons glow. One day I wear your love just like a season coat. I'm tying bricks to all my sorrows, drop them off the boat. I'm tying balloons to all my memories, just let them go. I was a fool for quarter century, not anymore. I'm done rhyming, I'm off violet, I'm more lilac. No more crying in the toilets of the oilac. Too many people to let an empire breed. My own mama know me closest, that's the God I see. Rosemary, parsley, sage, my home lady. I know the cold of January's been in my bones lately. I know the warmth of summer, hear it in your tone daily. Especially when you're expressing poems to little baby. I was drifting out in space when you saved me from the ether, plucked me from a dark hole and you gave me a little life, a chance to learn on this earth. Will you praise me, sacrifice your whole world when you raise me, Rosemary. Rosemary, parsley, sage, my home lady. I know the cold of January's been in my bones lately. I know the warmth of summer, hear it in your tone daily. Especially when you're expressing poems to little baby. I was drifting out in space when you saved me from the ether, plucked me from a dark hole and you gave me a little life, a chance to learn on this earth where you praise me, sacrifice your whole world when you raise me. I'm counting my blessings these days. Essence of life is lost on so many. Trying to take flight like a pheasant, getting grounded in the present just like my parents did. I was selling screamers and black cats to the nearest kid. Now I hold a home, 3 cats and the dearest kid. We called him Jacob, I left him with his mother's name. Can't pretend to know the depths of any woman's pain. Patriarchal systems, I know there's men to blame. Rosemary, parsley, sage, my home lady. I know the cold of January's been in my bones lately. Know the warmth of summer, hear it in your tone daily. Especially when you're expressing poems to little baby. I was drifting out in space when you saved me from the ether, plucked me from a dark hole and you gave me a little life, a chance to learn on this earth where you praise me, sacrifice your whole world when you raise me, Rosemary.
Good job, Shan. Good job, Rachel.
Gorgeous.
Sweet.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Rachel. It's funny, I think if I asked my mother, what do hip-hop artists and rap artists sing about, she'd say guns and strippers or something.
Yeah.
But like one of the sort of kind of recurring almost themes is a lot about loss and grief and all that kind of stuff. Of course, now I'll hasten to add my mother's image is wrong anyway. But I mean, why do you write about what you write about?
I think I have no choice but to write about that stuff. I do love stuff about guns and strippers, you know what I mean? But I've no experience in that, you know what I mean? And even when I was listening to that kind of music, and I still listen to it, it's almost the vulnerabilities in it that I attach myself to, you know? So my favourite music is when people really share the most vulnerable parts of themselves, you know? And I just wanted to do that with my music because that's what makes me want to listen to it over and over again. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like if I make a song that I like, I'll listen to it to death and become the most egotistical person ever to myself and listen to it like 40 times and then until I can't listen anymore, you know? So I found when I was sharing the most about myself, it was the most therapeutic and it made me listen more to it. And I just think that's where the best art comes from, I suppose, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
Because it's a shared experience. True.
Yes, exactly. That's it.
And people want to feel something.
They do.
It's hard to feel something about guns and strippers.
Unless you're doing it. I'm sure it's great cracking, really.
The song All the Leaves Are Falling
is
a good example.
I was at your funeral, I was in the cubicle, I was there when you were young, laid out looking beautiful. You were born on silver spoon. Oh, you were born so beautiful. All the leaves are falling, the summer leads into autumn. Call it the world is on us, pick our brains up from the bottom. Oh, yeah. Dublin city rains in my soul. It's a fucking savage reason to come home. Savagery that they all had to leave their homes, but it's a fucking savage feeling to come home. Maybe we just don't belong.
I mean, we probably wrote it, like 3 years ago, but it came out like a year and a half ago or something like that, yeah.
You glossed over something early that I want to come back to because I just think it's fun and interesting.
Right.
You mentioned, about smoking weed. And when you were studying law, you did your master's, was it?
Yeah.
Around the legalization of cannabis.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And not just as an exercise, you are an advocate.
Yeah, definitely. I'd probably be an advocate for the legalization of most drugs, to be honest. I think that the criminalization of them just hasn't worked across the board, like you're locking people up for changing their own consciousness, which is not really like a fair thing to do to anybody. Like there's already laws in place that say if I smoke weed or do cocaine or do whatever and go out and hurt someone, it's assault, you know what I mean? There doesn't need to be an extra conviction for the actual taking of the substance. And what you do then, I feel, is create a world where people actually want to do that more. You know, like Dutch people don't smoke a lot of weed. They do a bit, but like it's people coming into the country for a novelty that smoke a lot of weed, you know. So I do think if you legalized it here, it would be so much benefits, like for not just tax reasons, but people getting charges. Like I have friends that have charges over weed and like can't travel to the States from weed. Like that makes no sense to me, you know. It really doesn't. So that's why I kind of wanted to do something I was passionate about for my master's, and like I really threw myself into that and I loved it, you know. I try to keep on board of what's happening, but it's mad that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and then we seemed on the cusp of legalization medicinally anyway, and now we're still not there. Like, and it's just like indicative of the Irish government and like how slow they are at like changing legislation. Like, you know what I mean?
Also, they don't ever want to touch anything that might seem controversial.
Exactly.
Until they're absolutely forced into it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, the decriminalization of homosexuality is another good example.
Exactly.
Everyone's on board, but they wouldn't do it until they were forced into it because they just don't like to do things.
Yeah. And I was watching your speech from the Abbey the other day.
I do, it is true, believe that almost all of you are probably homophobes. But I'm a homophobe. I mean, it would be incredible if we weren't. I mean, to grow up in a society that is overwhelmingly and stiflingly homophobic and to somehow escape unscathed would be miraculous. So I don't hate you because you're homophobes. I actually admire you. I admire you because most of you are only a bit homophobic. And to be honest, considering the circumstances, that is pretty good going. But I do sometimes hate myself. I hate myself because I fucking check myself when standing at pedestrian crossings. And sometimes I hate you for doing that to me. But not right now. Right now, I like you all very much for giving me a few moments of your time, and for that, I thank you.
We've come so far. What was that, 7 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah. So, like, we've come so far since that. 6 years ago, gay people couldn't get married.
I know, yeah.
It's fucking mind-blowing.
Yeah.
In Ireland, like.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, I was 26 or something before I had legal sex in this country.
Like, that just blows my mind.
Like, I went through all my college years and everything, and it was a criminal offence.
That's insane.
Which is nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, and we think we're such a forward-thinking society. Like, it's like,
well, isn't it funny now? See, here, there's a little thing that you just said that I think is very instructive, actually, of something else. And we think we're such a forward-thinking society. We've only thought that for 10 years.
Yeah, right,
we never would have said that 15 years ago. When I was a teen, nobody would have ever have said that in the 1980s. Right. We were a backward-looking, all the place, and we all thought it. We knew that about ourselves.
Right. Now we have ideas of other
now this idea, this is a new idea that we're sort of forward-thinking or whatever.
But in drug legislation, we're so behind. Like, every other country is legalising it, and this
it sets young people up for a sort of a life that's been criminalised, and all the things that happen.
Exactly, and then the underground, the industry comes from that, and they like weed is their biggest fucking seller. You know what I mean? And then it's just society would be better if drugs were legalised. It would be obviously hard to do, but you start small. Start with cannabis. It's not harmful, People don't fucking jump off roofs or anything like that,
The cannabis thing is weird,
Huh?
The cannabis one is so weird that people are so hooked up on that when nobody's ever done anything to anybody on
Nobody's
that.
ever died. Think about alcohol and cigarettes, like.
They might have gotten fat or something. That's about it.
Well, eating a few Doritos and watch the fucking Bill Hicks documentary or something. But like,
well, the other thing is that there are good there are some examples. Like Portugal is a very good example.
For all drugs are decriminalised.
How beneficial that's been.
Yeah.
It's funny though. In theory, of course, I fully support. And I agree with everything you say about taking, this market out of the hands of criminals and, everything that goes along with it and blah, blah, blah. But weed has never been my drug. It's just never suited me.
Yes.
And I went to art college, so you can imagine, and so I really tried.
Yeah.
and, had millions of, tries. And it just always has made me unfun, boring. Everything becomes so stressed, like the phone rings. Anxious. Oh my God! How could I possibly be expected to answer the phone? And people, weed smokers all say, "Oh, you just haven't, done the right."
It's not even really for me anymore. I used to smoke a lot in my 20s, and now I haven't had a joint in weeks. Like, do you know what I mean? So,
in weeks,
But like, for someone that's like, talking about weed, like they usually be smoking every day. You know what I mean? But it's not for everybody.
No, it's not. No. But it's also never done me any harm whatsoever.
Drug legalization is all about harm reduction.
Yeah.
You legalize it, you educate them, you make a better product that's not full of shite, It's just...
Yeah.
They're just not willing to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they won't even have safe injection centres in this place.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Even that's slow. That was supposed to be 3 years ago or something.
I know. And it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
Well, before we finish up, what's next?
So I just finished writing an album. Me, Adam and Rachel were writing away on that along with a bunch of other people, and it's been a really, really nice experience because COVID was like up and down in terms of creativity, being stagnant. It's hard to get that inspiration, I suppose. But then, I just ended up writing this album that I fucking love so much, and I'm so excited to be sitting on it. So now we just have to put in the work and get it really finished. We're in the process of that. But next year, I'm going to be releasing that and then playing literally every gig I can possibly get my hands on. So,
look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neal. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure. And looking forward.
Thanks so much.
To hearing more stuff.
Yeah.
And if I ever need a dog walker for Penny, I know where to go to. Thanks
for the cat.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
music just came on.
This is our theme tune, Lisa Hannigan.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's class. She's
been
amazing.
on
She's deadly.
People always think it's funny that I do the drag for it, but in the old days, there was a studio audience and all of that, and there was monologues, and there was like a performance-y kind of element, and people talk to Panti differently than they talk to Rory. But then when it came down to one, it became more. But it's still this. Well, first of all, over the years he started videoing everything, so there's always a video. So and nobody wants to see Rory sitting here, and it still remains true that people talk differently to Panti, or they feel more able to be more revealing or something.
Right, really?
I definitely feel like Panti can definitely say stuff that people will take. They take it easier from Panti